Oh, this sounds awesome. Let's bounce it. Alright. Okay. Let's have a listen. What? Oh man. This sucks. There's gotta be a better way. Hey everyone, Robert here from Learn Audio Engineering, coming to you with another episode of Sound Strategies. Today, I want to share with you the benefits of mixing in mono, how you can do it, and why it will improve your mixes. But before we begin, I want to ask you, is mono mixing something that you're already doing? And if so, what's your favorite way to listen in mono? Do you have a favorite lo-fi single speaker setup? Let me know in the comments. So you might be asking, what is mono mixing? Well, in modern recording, a mono perspective is the sum of both the left and the right channels. Mono mixing is listening to your music from a single source, most commonly from a single speaker. Now in this video, I'm going to make some arguments about why you should begin the mixing process by listening in mono, and why it will improve the accuracy of your decisions in the long run. So there's some definite benefits to mixing in mono, and one of them is exposing flaws. When we begin mixing, we're not focused on making everything sound pretty. If we start panning things right away in a race to make the mix sound pretty and wide, we can easily fool ourselves into thinking that our mix is much better than it really is. So when we're getting to know a mix, it's really important that we are exposing flaws early on. This will emphasize the parts of the mix that need adjustment in order to make a more enjoyable song. Now this is harder to do in stereo because again, we can fool ourselves into thinking the mix is better than it is. It's really easy to separate things of similar frequency content by going, okay, you go into the left speaker, you go into the right speaker, and we're gonna be done with it. But sometimes that doesn't always work out so well. So if you think way back to the early careers of artists like the Beatles or Johnny Cash, much of these records were mainly recorded and mixed in mono. So this meant that the engineers had to fit the whole band into one speaker. They didn't have width to separate instruments. They had to do this using depth and height of low and high frequencies. Now that can sound like a tall order, but it challenges you to be more critical about how you distribute different frequency ranges and how you balance individual instruments. This is much different than doing it in stereo, where you can convince yourself that, yeah, that's loud enough, or yeah, that'll cut through. And then once you go and have a listen outside your studio, like in the car, it completely falls apart. So these flaws are usually instruments disappearing due to phase cancellation or frequency masking or poor arrangement. But mono mixing forces you to make decisions based on a single perspective. We can't rely on panning to separate instruments with similar frequency ranges. So this gives things like EQ, compression, automation, and volume balance decisions much more accuracy because we have to fit these tracks together in that single speaker. So in essence, we're mixing using the lowest fidelity scenario. So if we can make it sound good there, it's going to sound 10 times better when it's played back on a real quality system. Now, I'm not the only one who believes this. Mix engineer Derek Ali, who mixed a few of Kendrick Lamar's records, including To Pimp a Butterfly, says in a Sound on Sound article that he mixes in mono for 80% of the time. He goes on to say that his mentor, Dr. Dre, told him that by focusing on making the mix sound good on one small, crappy speaker, if you can do that, it's going to sound great on really good speakers. And today I want to go a little bit deeper to explore why this is a really great method and why it works. This is a really valuable technique because it enables you to mix with your audience's perspective in mind. We're not mixing to make it sound beautiful and perfect in your studio. And this goes back to my previous video about quick mixing, focusing on the end result and how your listeners are going to enjoy the music. Listen on as many different perspectives as you can so that you can make informed decisions on how that mix is going to sound in those different listening scenarios. Then you're going to be able to make compromises based on listening in the different scenarios. So the owner of one of the commercial studios that I interned at, he shared with me one of his favorite listening scenarios. He would put the mix on in the car, he'd roll down the windows, and go for a drive. Now this is hardly a perfect listening scenario, but that's how people listen to music. They put it on while they drive or work or do laundry, it's mostly on in the background in a noisy situation that's less than ideal. And often the listener's attention is split between tasks, so let's make it sound great for them. Let's get into their mindset. We spend so much energy being critical about the quality of our mix in a scenario that few people will ever get to truly experience. Why? Yes, it should sound fantastic on the hi-fi systems, but this isn't the standard anymore. Music is portable, and many common listening devices aren't as articulated as your home studio setup. So take the time to listen to your mix during your daily routine. Will you exercise, or you do laundry, or you go for a drive? Anything where your attention isn't 100%. In this way, you'll be listening to your music without being critical of every detail as you were at the beginning of the mix. Things that are out of place will have to really catch your attention. So you might be asking, okay, well that's great information, but how do I make my mix mono? Well, the easiest possible way is don't pan anything. If there are no differences between the left and the right channels, you are essentially listening to a mono mix. Now, if you've already done some panning and you just want to be able to check your mix periodically, you can use a stereo widening plugin and set the width to 0. This sums the left and right channels and gives you a mono mix plugin that you can turn on and off at will. Sometimes I'll go a step further and turn off one of my monitors to enhance the mono experience. Also, depending on the pan laws of your DAW, it's also possible to get a center boost when you sum your mix to mono. But that might be a topic for another video, so let me know if you're interested in hearing more about that. If you don't have a dedicated mono speaker, or you're mixing on headphones, you can bounce your mix and send it to your phone to listen on. This is actually a great way to check your mixes because many phone speakers are mono, and they also lack the lows and the highs of better systems, so they really expose the balance of the mids. The last way I'm going to suggest involves listening outside of the critical distance of your speakers. In acoustics, the critical distance, or the room radius, is the distance away from the source in which a sound will be the same volume anywhere in the room. From this distance, you are hearing the room's reflections at the same amplitude as the direct sound coming from the source. By monitoring outside the near stereo field of the monitors, or by going into an adjacent room to have a listen, we're essentially listening to a mono perspective based on the room's reflections. Don't believe this works? Put on a song, go stand in the other room, and try and pick apart what's in the left speaker, what's in the right speaker, what part of the mix is in stereo. You can't. Our ears don't localize sound this way. You can certainly hear where the mix is coming from, but because you are outside of the near stereo field, you're hearing the music as a single source, affected by the acoustic reflections of the room. This is a super simple way to make sure that your stereo mix has all the important elements sitting right where you want them and are clear and audible from any listening position. So in conclusion, using these techniques to mix in mono will help you get a better perspective on how your mix is going to translate into common listening scenarios. Sometimes it's hard to put our ego aside and remember that many people will be listening to your music on a system that's not as great as what you have in your studio. So always keep your audience in mind. And of course, we all want wide, full sounding mixes. And it may seem counterintuitive that mono is the secret, but it really works. I hope that this video has been helpful. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and feel free to subscribe to this channel for more videos coming your way soon. Thanks for watching and happy mixing.